I want to talk about 3 pillars of sustainability. It's amazing to be in Denver. 25,000 people, I think, are here. Who knew it was going to be that big? It's a bear market, and we're still building. So my hope is that I can share a little bit of how I think we should be building, given the market and the conditions we're in. Before I start, a little bit about myself. So I'm Marieke Flament. I'm the CEO of the NEAR Foundation. My first job in crypto was with Circle, where I was the managing director for Europe, Middle East, and Africa, end of 2015. And I'm the CEO of the NEAR Foundation since January 2022. NEAR, for those of you who don't know, NEAR, as of yesterday, is positioned as the blockchain operating system. And basically, we can enable to have a multi-chain from front-end to back-end, thanks to, in particular, our layer 1 protocol, which is very, very fast and also very sustainable. The role of the foundation, because that's the role that I lead and the entity that I lead, the role of the foundation is basically threefold. We exist to help raise awareness of NEAR, and actually what is NEAR, what is the blockchain operating system. We exist to help also kickstart the support of a growing ecosystem, and we exist because we champion decentralization and governance. So with that, over the next 15 minutes or so, I'd love to chat a little bit more about the state of the world and actually what we need to do about it. It's a bit shit out there. And we are at a turning point in history. More than ever, we need to take actually and act with integrity for our planet. And when we look at the climate condition, we go from actually burning up to actually being completely melting down. We seem to be using and taking our planet for granted, and we use more resources than actually we can produce. When we look at our society, more than ever, we are divided. The left, the right, the east, the west. And there is a lack of trust in our governments and actually in our communities. We're completely losing that. The pandemic and COVID has actually made marks. Beyond the millions of lives who have been lost, who knows what the next pandemic actually will be. But it's also left us mentally broken and completely isolated. And who knows what the next pandemic will actually be. In terms of social rights for women, actually, the pandemic had a major impact because we were working from home. And guess who most of the time took the lion's share of working from home? And I'm seeing some women, unfortunately, smile, but that looks like a known factor. Yes, it's women. And so we got back decades backwards instead of going forward. Not only that, but today with social media, we are in our own echo chambers. We don't talk with each other anymore. How many of you are sitting on a sofa with their partner and yet not talking, looking at their phone in your own echo chamber? The other major impact of COVID is actually that our governments have printed a lot of money, and therefore we are now suffering major inflation. And with that, therefore, the coming and the glooming of a recession. What a recession means is layoffs, and those are starting to happen. And who knows how long this is going to last. And not only that, but in our own industry, what we have seen is actually a reminder of the fact that sometimes we actually don't even know what it means to work with ethics and integrity at heart. I won't name names, you know what I'm talking about. So it's pretty much bad news everywhere. But it's not time to actually feel desperation or to feel that we cannot do anything about it, because we absolutely can do something about it. We can act, and it's in our hands to do something about it. In particular, because as technologists, we have in our hands the belief that what we can do with the technology that we have is to create a better place and a better world. So it's not time to leave, thank you. It's time to act. Although if it's to act, that's fine. If you're here and at this conference, it's probably because, like me, you believe in the power of Web3. You believe that actually with Web3 we can create better transparency, better accountability, and that we can actually get back in our hands the data and the governance that we should be owned. That's what I believe in. And more than ever, I think there is an urging cry that more than ever, we do need Web3. And we need to realize the promises of Web3. And we need to do that together. So when we think about actually how do we do that, there is two things that come in mind. One, right now, yes, we're in a bear market, and yes, it's actually difficult, but it's time to have convictions and to think through what we're building with conviction. And the second part is actually thinking through sustainability. And what does sustainability mean as we actually think through building for a better future? So talking about convictions, and again, those are not sometimes easy, especially when you go through bear markets. I have to admit that at times it's difficult to find either the energy or the willpower to say we can go through that and we can actually do better. Conviction number one, what we're building ultimately is for users. And if we don't have that in mind, that we need to build applications that have actually real engagement and that I could do something meaningful for users, then we're losing track. And so at NEAR, what we do actually is the metric that is our North Star is monthly active users. Because ultimately, we believe that if we focus on that, value will be derived. And it might look that actually we might be missing out or that there are things that we should be doing that we're not. But ultimately, a conviction that is about building and adding real value to end users will derive value. To do that, we need to have amazing usability. It needs to be seamless. It needs to be so easy to actually be onboarded and to do real things in that ecosystem. NEAR, from day one, has been focused on usability. And what we announced yesterday with the blockchain operating system is pushing the boundaries of that even a step further. Usability for developers, usability for end users. That's a must. So conviction number one, which I urge you to join us on, is actually what we're doing is for users. Conviction number two, we have to think long term. We cannot continue thinking today and the price today and tomorrow and just that short-termism. It is actually very important to think long term, to think what is the impact of what we're developing and what's the value that will be derived longer term. To do that, to think long term, it's actually important to make big bets. It's important to have a strategic focus and to think through what can we do that will really move the needle forward. And again, the ways we're making with blockchain operating system are getting on that trench. The other part to think long-term is actually having very solid fundamentals. So solid tech, great people, and actually also resources. Now, we've talked about convictions. Let's talk about sustainability. And of course, when we talk sustainability, everybody here is thinking climate. And there is a climate crisis. And I'm sure we're all in our own way helping and actually thinking about that and how we can actually help make that less a crisis. But sustainability is not just about the environment. Nevertheless, starting with the environment, from day one, NEAR protocol is actually a proof of stake. And therefore, that means that from day one, we've been carbon neutral. From day one, we've been audited. From day one, we've actually looked at how can we reduce our footprint. We're super proud to have announced that we're actually partnering with Flow Carbon, which will actually issue its token on NEAR because we have these values of sustainability and carbon neutrality. And that means that actually we're able to attract also projects to build on us because we have that at our core and our heart. Sustainability is also inclusion. And what I mean by inclusion is diversity of thoughts, is diversity of background. It's actually also diversity of language because ultimately, English is still very much a privilege. And actually, if we want to have an impact globally, we have to think locally. And so we have to speak local languages, and we have to go in those local communities. And of course, inclusion is about having a diversity of thoughts. And I think it's really important, as technologists, what we're building has our biases into it. And so as technologists, we need to think through how do I minimize the biases that I'm bringing? How can I have more voices actually participate and help me lower my biases so that the technology that we're building is actually really for everybody? And the last part of thinking sustainably is actually integrity. And sometimes we forget about that. And I was asked just before coming on stage how to qualify integrity. How do we know if we are acting with integrity? And I think, well, think about your grandmother. Would she be proud of what you're doing? I think that's a good lens for actually thinking if we're acting with integrity. And not losing that, aside, because sometimes we can get carried away, I think is extremely important. So it's time to act. I really, truly, genuinely believe that people who are here are builders. And if anything, the 25,000 people who are joining here in a bear market are showing that it's time to build. But it's also time to act. And as we build, it's time to think of the broader consequences of what we're building will have actually on the world we're living in. And I think each and every person who is here can carry that with himself or herself in his project. Now, obviously, if you want to do that, we invite you to join us. We really, truly think inclusion, multi-chain, and how can we actually together get to build this better Web3 world that we all envision. And with that, if you want to actually try what the blockchain operating system means, please join us. Thank you.